Hello everyone, it's so nice to be back. I know that, let me just wait till I go live. Here's Aliza, I can see her. We're just telling more friends to join, and I think Aliza is going to join us just in a second. Uh, I can see that my screen is divided. It's so nice to be here again after a few weeks. Um, that it's just feels quite surreal that I haven't been on IG Live for Conversations with Olga for a while. Oh, here you go. Hi, Aliza.
Hi, Olga. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So great to have you in the space. I was just sharing with our viewers who join us that it's so nice to be back in the space. You know, I've been doing conversations with Olga almost every 2 weeks, actually every 2 weeks, and this has been quite a break for maybe over a month or 1 month and a half. So it's great to restart this again with you joining me today. So thank you so much. I think we have more and more people joining in. It's wonderful. Welcome to Conversations with Olga.
Thank you. I always enjoy all my conversations I have with you, Olga. It's just that other people are joining this one.
Thank you. So the way we're going to do it is basically very simple. I will say a few words about Conversations with Olga series in general. Then I will tell a few words, because otherwise I would spend probably the whole hour just talking about your accomplishments. So I will summarize it very quickly about you, and then we'll jump into some of the topics that I'm sure everybody is interested to listen to. And our program is quite full, so we'll try to cover as much as we can. No, just talk. Does it sound
Sure.
good to you? Great, wonderful.
Sounds great.
So, well, hello everyone, and welcome again for people who've been listening and following me, and welcome our new listeners who came here especially to listen to our conversation with Aliza. Conversations with Olga started for about over a year ago. I started this series during the circuit breaker with the goal to introduce friends and personalities I've met throughout my career to the multicultural Singaporean and global community through a platform that, to me, it was the easiest to assess, and I felt it was interesting. These conversations run the gamut of from intellectual and cultural exchanges to more personal conversations with people and how they fulfill their dreams. My main mission for this series, and hope actually, is to inspire and cultivate more diverse and inclusive communities. It's an honor for me to have today my dear friend, guest for the episode number 34, Aliza Knox. And as I mentioned, I'll read a little bit of your bio, Aliza, in a very, very few words, and then we'll start this conversation. Aliza is a speaker, tech executive, and author of Don't Quit Your Day Job, outlining 6 mind shifts you need to rise and thrive at work. Dedicated to empowering the next generation of leaders building successful global businesses, Aliza has been dubbed as a kick-ass woman, slang in the world of tech, and I can't agree more. Recently listed as a top 100 women in tech in 2021 in Singapore, she's also been named the IT Woman of the Year in 2020 in Asia, honored as the AWA Singapore International Businesswoman of the Year before, elected to Chief Executive Women and featured in the book Women on Board, Making a Real Difference. Aliza is a non-executive director of Tyro Payments, Health Metrics, Azentio, Healthway Medical Group. She previously served on the boards of listed companies Centra Group, SingPost, among other prominent industry titans. She led SWAT Superwomen at Twitter and did the same for women at Google. She has served on 2 key committees for the Singapore government and was invited to address the Singapore Institute of Directors of why gender diversity is important to boards as well as on globalization. She's a mentor to young women via Minerva and the Asian University of Women. And as I said, Aliza, this is just a few of your accomplishments. And without further ado, we'll jump into how it all started. You've had an incredible career to date. Where did the interest come from? Because I believe you actually went to the liberal arts school.
I did. I went to a liberal arts college in the US, which is sort of 4 years of studying all sorts of things. And funnily enough, before that, I grew up, or I went to a high school near Stanford University, which has a PhD program in education. And one of the ways I earned money in high school was to take tests there. There was lots of testing going on and you could get paid. And one of them, I think, was for the US military on, do any of these tests actually predict anything? You know, do they all say the same thing? So I took these tests about what would be an ideal career for me. And one of them said forestry and one of them said the clergy, neither of which has panned out. I guess it's not too late.
It's never too late.
And it's not too late. I can learn to wield an axe. And so I ignored those. I went to college and I just did a bunch of interviews. There were people who came to campus. And of course, the things that I thought I wanted to do, that I cared the most about, I was too nervous for those interviews and I didn't get them. But I got offers at a couple banks, one of which was in New York. So I started down the path of financial services. And then I had a whole first part of my career in financial services and consulting. And then later I pivoted to tech.
Got it. Well, quite unusual. It's not a transformation. It's just basically starting from absolutely new field that you probably didn't know much about it. Amazing. You've talked before about your career as a series of software upgrades. Of course, you have to use the tech words, and I understand that. So can you explain what actually it means? Because to be honest with you, I'm not a tech person. It's just a buzzword for me. And what made you shift? What is your upgrade right now to the current role?
Right. Well, they are upgrades, or they could just be a later release. So my first release, the way I'm talking about it, and I didn't used to talk about it this way, but having been in tech, I thought it would be the right thing to do. So 1.0 was financial services and consulting. 2.0 was tech. So I moved from financial services to tech. I was in the Bay Area and I had an opportunity, which was a bit serendipitous, to meet one of the real founders of the internet in surf. And through that, I pivoted to tech. And then during COVID, during the lockdown from COVID, I guess we're still in COVID, I decided to ignore my own advice and I did quit my job. And so now I'm in 3.0, and really we can talk about it later, but my advice is never quit. It's just, you don't always have to quit. So I ignored the title of the book. I did stop working full time. I'm now in this third phase where I am on boards. I have a couple serious mentees, an Afghan woman and an Australian Olympic athlete. And I'm trying to do some things to give back, like writing this book, because all the author profits are going to Vital Voices, which is a nonprofit out of Washington, D.C. that tries to get women into politics and policy making. So I guess it's just a good way to describe different phases of my career.
Yes, got it. And, you know, all these different moves, have you ever regretted any of your career moves? And if so, what have you learned from this? Regrets, I should say.
I think I have regretted them, but if I look back, they have spurred me to do other things. So I was at the banking job in New York for 5 years. I got an MBA at night in order to use a swimming pool there. And I switched to marketing at American Express because somebody came and recruited me, a woman who'd been at NYU, really impressive, really inspiring. I really wanted to work for her. And she left after 3 months and left me in a situation where I didn't have a sponsor, didn't know anybody, and I worked for 2 different people who were very, very difficult for me to work with. So at that point, I really regretted it, and I thought, what have I done? I'm stuck. I can't leave this situation, because if I leave, people will say, what's the matter with her? She's left within a year. On the other hand, I was so miserable, it spurred me to do something I had been thinking about for a long time, which was moving overseas. I'd spent 6 months of college in England, and I had a great time, but it was cold and rainy, and I ate a lot of soggy vegetables. It was a long time ago. And I felt I wanted to come to Asia. Look, here we are now, but I thought my language skills were too limited. So I looked on a map, I found Australia, and then Crocodile Dundee, if anybody's seen it, movie came out, and I thought, right, I'm going to Australia, and I got myself a job there. So do I regret taking the job at Amex? Maybe, because it wasn't very good for me. But would I have made this move to Australia with the, even when I went then, I told them I eventually want to go to Asia. Would I have made that move if I hadn't been unhappy? I don't know. So it's hard to say when you look back. Should I regret it or not? And then when I went to Schwab later from BCG, I moved from Singapore to San Francisco to build international for them. After 2 years, Schwab decided they didn't want international anymore. And we laid off my entire group. And I had a choice of doing domestic focused work at Schwab, or taking a package. And I'm not that interested, although I am American, I'm not that interested in the US domestic market. So I took the package. And again, we had moved our family, which was my husband and 2 kids, to the US for this job. And 2 years later, it was gone. Do I regret it? Maybe. But if I look back, things have worked out. So I don't know how they would have worked out if I hadn't done it. Would I have been late taken the job at Visa, been surf and gone into tech? So I don't know.
Well, it seems that you followed your intuition one way or another, and sometimes it's super important, and you have a stamina, and we talk about stamina a little bit later, because I think it's a huge component in some of the ideas and some of the thoughts that you share in your book, and what's important, I believe, in your thought process. But, we now coming out a little bit from the completely virtual working environment at home during the COVID that we're kind of all of us used to. Although I've been working I have a home office for most of my career in general. Some of us are required to rebuild or maybe even build real connections in a hybrid world. How have you been navigating this world?
I think it's harder. I'm definitely a kind of people person, and I like to see people. So I guess one of the things I've heard people say is to try to spend a little bit extra time when you're meeting somebody virtually. Our tendency on Zoom is to go straight to business, or straight to the transaction. I mean, if you go to meet somebody for coffee, I think there's much more, or whatever, go for a walk. I think there's much more of a tendency to spend the first 5 minutes asking how the other people are, what's going on with their kids or their hobbies. But somehow on Zoom, it feels like we're wasting people's time if we do that. So I think we all jump straight to business. So I'm trying to make a bit extra effort to make these conversations casual and find out a bit. My friend Batsheva, who I think always says, even for Zoom, I don't make a meeting, I make a friend. Yeah. So, spending that extra effort, or having the team or whatever spend that extra effort in a meeting at the beginning and maybe at the end to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more focused on the individuals and less on the transaction at hand. And then I'm trying to see people in person where we can. At one point we were limited to 2 people, so 2 of us could go out, and it was 5. Now we're less restricted.
Exactly. Absolutely, I agree with you. But to me personally, the human interaction and the energy that I feel in the real world, in the physical world, is crucial. But that's, I'm not a tech, so I think I don't probably need to talk immediately in terms of the certain essence of the business that you discuss over Zoom. So it's a little bit more difficult in my field. Anyway, you've led tech business in APAC for so many years. Give us your sense of representation of women in the tech sector these days, and in general as leaders in the region, especially in Asia, in our region in Asia.
Well, things are getting better, but I would say they're not where they should be. There was a study by Boston Consulting Group and the Infocom Media Development Authority here in Singapore that showed that the tech industry is getting more diverse. Women now make up 28% of the tech sector worldwide. Southeast Asia is leading this with 32% of the tech talent. On the other hand, that's still less than, obviously, the percentage of women in the world are in the workforce. Very small percentage have female founders or co-founders. In the US, women are only 17 to 20% of CIOs in big companies and 27% of IT managerial roles. And female founders, I think many people are aware of this problem, secure only about 2% of venture capital. It goes up and down, but 2 to 3% of funding, which is really, really low, even though they have very high success rates.
And what is your take on it? I mean, what needs to be done? What do you think the ways of changing it?
Well, that's a much tougher issue. If I had the answer to that, I think I'd have many, many jobs at the same time. I think one thing that is pretty clear to me is to never underestimate the power of role modeling. In every company I've worked in, when I've been the local leader or a team lead, my team has had a very high percentage, often the highest percentage of other women. And, partly that's because I care about hiring other women, but I think a lot of it has to do with whether people can articulate it or not, implicitly seeing, okay, there's a woman in charge. This must be a good place for me because I'm a woman and I can see that women can get ahead. And I think that's true for all sorts of minority groups where whether or not they can recognize it, some people do, some people don't, but they're implicitly more inclined to sign up for that company because they see that it's probably a comfortable place for them. So I think that that's a very important point. I also think, I know it's very, very unpopular, but I'm kind of a fan of quotas, particularly for things like women on boards or women in large committees or something where we can really force people to measure, or even just the threat of a quota. In lots of countries where they start saying we might put a quota in, companies start acting more quickly about adding diversity. So I know that people don't like to be forced by regulation, but I do think sometimes it helps. And then once women or minorities are in, people can see, oh, they do a great job. Good, let's get some more.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I like this kind of the threat of a force sometimes. I would like to move into the work and life balance topics, which you obviously been doing most of your life, most of your career. The modern workforce.
As have you.
Yes, it's true. The modern workforce is obviously changing so rapidly that what are your thoughts with regards to the changes of our work life that have come about, especially during the pandemic, and how do you see this changing?
Sure. I mean, one of the interesting things for me that I know you and I have talked about before, I don't like that word work-life balance or the term. It kind of implies a seesaw that if you work more, then you lose more in your life, or if you have more in your life, then you can't do as well in your work. And plenty of people have found ways to combine it. I don't think you can do everything all the time, but I think you can do a lot. We've both had good careers, we've both had kids, we've both done things outside our careers. So, I do think it's possible. But I think the pandemic has made some changes. I think one is, I think there will be more flexibility for people, which is great. How do they manage their time? How often do they commute? I think some people, it's really caused them to reprioritize. I think we talk mostly about people reprioritizing and doing more of their hobbies or their family life, but some people, frankly, might decide that they want to spend more time at work, that they enjoy being out of the house. I think that there are fewer boundaries now, which is a downside. It used to be that in some places, people were like, I won't bother them. They're not in the office. That's when I bother them. But now, because everybody's at home all the time, or they were like, well, I can bother them at home because I always have to bother them at home. So just because it's 8 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night or 6 in the morning, there's now boundaries. And so I think that's an issue. And you can even see some countries like Portugal are legislating against that and telling companies they can't expect email answered or ask people to be at meetings other than 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Portugal time. And then for some careers that really need apprenticeship, like law, consulting, accounting firms, where I think a lot of the younger people expect to spend time, maybe they bump into a partner in the hallway and ask a question. That's not happening anymore because people aren't going in. And those young people are not going to call a partner or email them and say, can I get on a Zoom with you? You know, they're too terrified to do that, just to ask about one little phrase. And so I think those people are losing out of it.
I absolutely agree. So, and I realize that the notion of it's not possible to have the full life outside of the office and with the family, I absolutely discount it because I don't believe in it. For me personally, working and progressing in my career have always been an integral part of my overall life. I fully correlate happiness and content in the relationship with happiness in content in my work, and I think this is what we all should strive for. So as you said, there's not never an ideal situation, but I think finding the balance for your own self is extremely important and personal. So do you agree with me that there's sort of that caring for a career is sort of the same as caring for the relationship?
Yeah, I totally agree. I wrote a chapter called You're in a Relationship with Your Career. Oh yeah, I should show you my book in case you haven't seen a hard copy. But
we'll talk about
there's
the book as well.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So there's a chapter in there called Nurture Your Relationship, or You're in a Relationship with Your Career, Nurture It, because something weird's happened. Like for those of us who are in or have been or want to be in a relationship with another person, most of the stuff you read says or listen to, because now that we all listen to podcasts, you can't expect everything from that other person. They're not going to fulfill all your needs. And I think that's true. And if you expect them to fulfill all your needs, you're probably going to really damage that relationship. But somehow, in the time that I started working, and I know we're around the same tenure, so maybe for you too, I think working was, okay, I need a job. I got to pay the rent. Ultimately, maybe I want to buy a house. Maybe I want to raise kids and pay for school or pay for summer camp. And then there was a lot of talk, well, work should be fulfilling and rewarding, which I think it should. You should get, a lot out of it. And hopefully it's even fun some days or a lot of days. And then there was a lot of discussion, particularly in the tech industry and also in nonprofit, about working for a mission-driven company. And then, we got to this point where there was a lot of talk about work being your passion and fulfilling your passions. And that is a really high bar, in my opinion. Like, I don't think we expect another person to fulfill all of our passions. I don't know why we think a job or a career should do about it. So I think that is difficult. And if we expect too much of it, then we're maybe disappointed. And interestingly, I think I've read that 5% of the people who have changed jobs in the US in the Great Resignation or Great Reshuffle or whatever you want to, have already gone back to their original company because they've got these expectations that are too high. Yes. So yes, I completely agree with you.
Yes, and talking about, while we're on the subject, I would like to talk about boundaries. I feel that all of us have to set boundaries in our relationships, in our work relationships, and our personal relationships. Can you please share with us your thoughts on the boundaries in general, especially, of course, in the tech world on a high level?
Yeah, well, I think we were just talking about that a minute ago, right? Which is that the work from home maybe got us to the point where people see fewer boundaries than they used to. And I mean, I think different people operate different ways. Some people I know are really great at saying, these are my hours at work, and these are my hours at home or at horseback riding or at water polo, and I don't touch my phone or my email in between. I'm not really good at that personally, but what I do is I try to demonstrate or a role model that I do have these other things in my life. So when I started, since I've been at Google, so that's 15 years ago, I've always used Google Calendar. It's always been open, right? So my staff or my friends can see it if they want to sign up. And every day I go to the gym because I'm high energy and maybe full of beans, and which and I need to get that energy out somehow. Yeah. And so in my diary, every day there's an hour and a half to go to the nearest gym, 15 minutes to get there and change, an hour to work out, 15 minutes to get back. And my teams have seen that forever. And, it's a lot because I've always had these international roles. So living in Singapore, early in the morning I'm on calls with the US, and late at night on calls with India, and then maybe Europe. And so I couldn't say, oh, I go to the gym before work or after work. I just want to have enough time every day to go to the gym. And so it's in there, and my team can see she's going to the gym. Like, I didn't call it something else, like a dentist appointment or a meeting, something that might be acceptable at work. It's very clear. I'm doing something that's not work, and it's okay to do it. And so that's, I think important, and people need to do that for themselves. I have another friend, Peruze, who lives here, who's just had her second child, and she's just said to her company, I will not do anything between 6:30 and 8 at night. And she's worked with her EA. That I think it's maybe 6 to 8:30. Sorry, it's a bit longer. And if you need me, if we need to do something, I'll do it for a little while after 8:30. But I am carving out this time to be with my little kids, because that's when we have dinner and put them to bed. And you can't talk to me. And she's gone to that company and written a 100-day plan for, reabsorbing new parents so that this works. And she's really set a clear boundary, and I think it's great.
It's absolutely great, and yes, and it's just, I think it's cause for respect more than anything else, and I think the productivity and increases while you're doing that. Wonderful.
I think you're right, because I think if you don't get anything for yourself, your productivity probably has diminishing marginal returns, because you're so exhausted and you have nothing left for you. I agree.
But I think to do that, you need to make sure that there is no guilt trip of doing that. Because I try to do it and I try to set the boundaries, but then guilt trip kicks in. Oh, maybe, he really needs to have an answer. Let me just do it. So, and then I do it and I feel guilty in both ways. So yes, it's obviously self-training. But
I think so.
Yes, wonderful to hear this from you. I know that many people, some of our friends, are contemplating a job change, especially at this moment. And stamina is an essential to longevity in a career. And you talk about it in your book as well. And it is important to seeing the bigger picture and rising above the low points of your life, career life. Can you give us some practical strategies or some practical points for dealing with career stumbling blocks, with career changes, with difficult bosses, with unfair dismisses, and feeling low in general in your workplace?
So I think that's a pretty broad range that you've outlined, right? So if you're feeling a bit stuck, I think you can go and do job dating or, informational interviewing, see what's out there. And I've often encouraged people to do that who work for me. They're like, I'm stuck, there's nowhere for me to go here, and obviously we'll try to figure things out. But I like it because they either go out and talk to 4 or 5 companies and come back and go, you know what, I really like where I am now. But, of all the things, the grass is not greener, I want to stay. Or they find something great for them. So that's one. I think if you know you like where you are now and you want to stay, but you don't see that next promotion or next parallel or lateral move that you want, then maybe if you've got a great manager or boss, you can have a discussion about, I'm not learning enough anymore. Here are some things I want to do. There's a guy in the book named, his fake name, but Tim Lu, who was stuck in that situation. And he said, I'd really like more experience with government relations and with business development until it's time for my next move. And he got that and gave him enough energy to stay where he was. I think if you've really had, if you get into unfair dismissals or a really difficult boss, I'm not an expert. You need to be dealing with HR and legal. But I do think that you need to fight back enough to feel that you have sort of an agency in your career. You don't want to feel like you've been a victim and there's nothing you can do. So for example, I worked with a younger woman who basically it was pretty clear she'd been laid off at the beginning of COVID because she was pregnant. They laid off a bunch of other people, but they were all low performers. She was a really high performer. And she called me back and we figured out what to do. And, she was so angry and it did seem unfair, but I said, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay? She's like, well, absolutely not. I don't want to stay because this is not the kind of culture that I want to be part of. They told me I was, an integral part of the firm, blah, blah, blah. And now clearly I'm not. So for her, what we needed to do, and she did get a lawyer involved, right? As again, I'm not an expert, was to say to the company, I don't agree with the dismissal, but I will go, but here is what I want from you. You know, you've fired me in such a way that I don't get my maternity benefits anymore, just because the way the company was set up, or things like that. And this is what I want. And so in the end, they gave her some of it that was important to her. She walked away with her head held high, feeling, okay, I've been clear, I've taken care of myself, and I can go to the next thing feeling okay, not feeling victimized.
Yeah, I think
and I think sometimes also, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said it's the most important to have this self-satisfaction and calm within your own self, no matter what the outcome is. So that's great that she managed to do that.
Yeah, and I think just really, I guess the word I call is agency, not feeling like someone else is controlling you.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to have the stamina.
Absolutely, because otherwise it can break you. Let's talk a little bit about your new book, Don't Quit Your Day Job, and you have to tell us also where the book is available and how people around the world, and in Singapore, of course, first of all, can buy it. What is the reason and why did you write this book? That's my first question. And also, who are the audience? Whom did you write this book for?
Sure. So, okay, I'll take this opportunity to hold it up again. This is my book, Don't Quit Your Day Job, 6 Mind Shifts to Rise and Thrive in the World of Work. And it's available on Amazon. If you're in Singapore, it's available on Kinokuniya. If you Google Don't Quit Your Day Job, Aliza Knox, pretty easy to find. I think the Audible book is out tomorrow or something like that. So a few people said they've been waiting for that. I wrote it because I spent a lot of time going out for coffee with people talking about their careers. I think a lot of people come to talk to me because I've been a woman in tech, because I'm older, because they think I'll know something insightful, which, yeah, sometimes I do. And when you work in tech, you learn the most important thing is scale. And you cannot scale going out for coffee with people. They're only 24 hours a day, except for the days you fly from here to the US. And I don't want to spend the whole day having coffee. And I don't even really like coffee. I drink these decaf lattes. So it just doesn't make sense for me to keep doing that. I like other people, as we said before, I enjoy, meeting people in person, but I can't spend all my time doing that. So I thought if I wrote down some of the key mind shifts that I think are helpful, then maybe that would help other people. Yep. And the book is mostly stories. So I have these 6 mind shifts, and I think there are about 36 people in the book, some disguised, some not. They range in age from 22 to late 60s. They are from primarily Asia, including Australia and the US, but there's a couple Europeans and one woman from Latin America. And all nationalities, different kinds of jobs. So I'm hoping it speaks to lots and lots of different kinds of people, and that when people read it, it's a pretty light read, I would say. I'd say about 2.5 hours. I think very reachable. It's, it's stories. And it's relatable, I think is the word I was looking for. And I'm hoping people read it and get one idea for now. Oh, this is something I can do or something I can act on. And maybe another idea that in 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years pops up again and it helps them. That would be, to me, that would be really great outcome.
Got it. Thank you for sharing the bit of a synopsis. You mentioned just now, even introducing your book, about the 6 mind shifts. I don't want to pray, and I'm not going to ask for you to spell every single mind shift, because I obviously want all of our listeners, our followers, to buy your book and to learn for themselves. But I would love you to share at least one. And what is the most pivotal to your own success and why?
Well, I think we've already covered 2, right? Not in much detail, but one about treating your career the way you would a relationship. And also we've talked about stamina. And for me, I think stamina is my biggest one. And I would consider stamina to be perseverance plus enthusiasm. So not just gritting it out. Grit's important, and there's a lot been written on it, particularly by Angela Duckworth. But I think not just grit and not just grinding, having fun, but really hanging in there and finding ways to make it enjoyable. So if I share a third one, which is still only half the book, so hopefully you'll go out and read it. And it is on Kindle too, so you don't even have to buy the paperback. A third one that I really like that we've kind of been talking about is connection trumps tech savvy, even in tech firms. I think there's a lot to be said. I mean, I think we all know that you need a sponsor at work. You need someone who's really going to pull you up, who's in that meeting we used to call it calibration in tech firms, where several people are up for promotion. And there's the one person, Olga's in the meeting and says, it's Aliza's turn. I know there are 3 people who are up for promotion. We can only do 1, but this is why it's Aliza. That's a sponsor. That's somebody who'll stick their neck out for you. Yep. I think there are mentors who are people who maybe give you advice along the way. I talk a lot about building a personal board of directors. I think that we look at corporate boards of directors whose main responsibility is to hire and fire the CEO, but who have big roles in creating insight for the company, helping direct it, and giving ideas to the management team. And we each need someone like that in our lives, diverse, insightful people, and you can sort of build a board of directors. I don't think they even need to know that they're on your board, and I talk about that and how to do that. And then I talk a lot about some good old-fashioned manners that I think build connections, like consideration, follow through, saying thank you. It's totally underrated. Not all the time, not obsequiously, but if someone does you a favor, you can bother to thank them in some way. Praising reasonably often for your team and in public so that other people hear it. Again, not obsequious, but when it's due. So those are a few of the things that I talk about in connection trumping tech savvy, even in tech.
And it definitely could relate not only to the tech industry, it's overall, I believe. So I think it's
absolutely
very valuable to all of us, including me, who hasn't even worked in the corporate world, even though I have an MBA. So yes, absolutely. I have known you for many years, Aliza, and outside of your workspace, and I would describe you as a fun and adventure-loving person, caring mom and caring wife and extremely loyal friend. I can vouch for that for sure. Vulnerable and compassionable. But if someone who worked with you, what do you think, how would they describe you?
I suppose it depends which company, what time. I've matured over the years, but generally I get described as high energy, a bit of a corporate cheerleader, really describing to people what we need to do and cheering the team on to get there. I think you might know that in American public schools, the pinnacle of popularity is being a cheerleader. And I don't think I was either well known enough or athletic enough to be one. So somehow it's spilled over into my adult life. And I love being sort of what I would call a corporate cheerleader. Go team, let's get it. How do we do it? Doing it in an enthusiastic way. So I think that's how a lot of people describe me. Reasonably caring, nurturing as a boss, and fun and focused. I'm very goal-oriented.
Great. And I think the stamina point probably kicks in a big way when the people sort of talk about you, either in the present or in the past when you work with them. I can feel it. I believe so. A little bit about success in general. It's not, as we all know, depending only on just the hard work, but it's also now our ability to build and maintain genuine relationships through our career lives. Why do you think this is important?
So I think if you look at what you need to build a career, what you need to lead a company, one of the most important things is trust. So I've actually written these 2 Forbes articles. One is the new CEO, Chief Empathy Officer, and is the new CTO, used to be Chief Executive Officer, and is the new CTO, which used to be Chief Technology Officer, now the Chief Trust Officer. Because there's a lot of being able to build these relationships at work. So I think you have to be really, really good at your job. Of course, you have to perform. But I think also to advance these relationships you have to build, they're about trust. And there's a professor at Harvard, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but Sedal Neely. And she wrote a book called Remote Work Revolution, Succeeding from Anywhere. And she talks about these two things: cognitive trust, which is somebody's going to deliver, which is what I talked about, competence. And then, are they going to do the job well? And then emotional trust, which is more subtle and based on the feeling that others care about you and your well-being. And I think those elements of trust enable you to build connections, particularly the emotional trust. And they help you create social capital. Yeah. And they help you lead a team because they create employee engagement. And they help you get things done because in most cases, like I know you run your own business, but you have subcontractors and you have to trust them to get things done for you. And if I'm in a Silicon Valley tech firm where there's an engineering vertical and a product vertical and a marketing vertical and an accounting vertical, I need to be able to work across those verticals to get things done for clients. And the way that I get people to help me is not just that we have shared KPIs, okay, we need the revenue because we have equity in the company or we're both being driven by these measures, but also, hey, if these people trust me or know they can collaborate with me, they'll probably choose to work with me and help me out.
I absolutely agree. And that's where, on my opinion, especially in the field that I am, the soft skills are so important as well. Building trust is extremely important. I would not be able to do anything without building this trust. But, having certain soft skills in a way that without compromise, giving these people comfort, building their loyalty, being passionate about what you do. These are all the soft skills that correlate with any industry. Tech, I'm sure maybe as well, but definitely in my field and where I work, I think this is very, very important. Do you think the attitudes toward building those soft skills is changing a little bit and the importance of it is becoming a little bit more elevated?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. That's why I wrote the Chief Empathy Officer article. And I think you're right. I think it goes across every industry. And particularly now, I think Gen Z, which is now 25% of the workforce, is demanding that even more. And if you look at all these statistics from the Great Resignation, yes, people are asking, or the Great Reshuffle, asking for more flexibility. And right now, I think there's a tight job market and people are also asking for higher pay. But the stuff that's still listed and has consistently been listed as main reasons for leaving jobs, at studies done by McKinsey, LinkedIn, BCG, is I want a manager and a company who value me and are invested in me. And how do you show that value and investment? It's by soft skills, some empathy, some ways of showing feedback that has really thought about what they think of me. Aliza, you're good at this stuff, and here's some stuff you really need to develop. And it matters. So firms with disengaged cultures, for example, which means employees don't feel that happen, have like 37% higher absenteeism. And firms with highly engaged culture have higher profitability. So you can really see that this reflects in the soft skill reflects in output and performance.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you agree with me. To me, I think it's very, very fundamental. Thank you for sharing this. Aliza, you've been a mentor to a number of people, and you mentioned just now in our conversation that you're mentoring 2 people, and I know how seriously you're taking this task upon yourself. And besides being an expert in the field, what does anyone should possess in terms of to qualify to be a mentor and to make a difference in people's lives with this respect?
So I think there's a difference. These 2 people that I talked about a mentor are a really big commitment. The coffee mentoring is just that, it's just kind of people I'm like, I'm happy to spend an hour with.
About your real commitment to these 2 individuals at the moment.
Okay, but I think anybody can be a mentor, and it is just about the commitment. Are you gonna help this person over the long run, be there for them? But again, I think a mentor is like these 2 people. I can't do a lot for them in their workplace or their university institutions, which is where they both are right now. I can help them, but I can't be the sponsor. Like I can't get them promoted or I can't give them A's. I can just be there for them in a way of moral support and kind of independent advice. And I think everybody's got something to offer. And I think all of us, but particularly women should pay it forward by helping younger women who want help in business. Like, I'm sure anybody would want to hear from you, Olga, about how to start your own business, how to pivot when things change. You've been amazing at that. Building a personal brand. Like, I would come to you for help. I have come to you for help on those things. And so I think like everybody's got something to offer. I think anyone can be a mentor as long as they want to put a little time and energy in.
Yes.
And you have to be careful about saying yes to everybody, because you have to, that's where the boundaries come in.
Yes, I agree. I have observed many times when people agree with their clients, with their bosses, with their colleagues, etc., only either later to regret it, to complain, to rebel, or underperform. And I have learned that this might not be the best way of doing it. I'm by nature a very straightforward person, and I always express myself in a true way and express my opinion. What do you think that being agreeable is important and being considered to be promoted for promotion?
So this is pretty interesting topic, and particularly Act 1 for women on the call. I think that women run into this double bind paradox, where men can be both powerful and likable, and that's a good thing to get promoted. Women are supposed to project authority to advance in the business world, but generally the more powerful they appear, the less they're liked. And there's just tons of research on it. Probably the most famous one that I know about is this Heidi Howard case at Harvard, where they studied the same resume with just two different names. And among grad students, both male and female, people were more in favor of picking Howard as a leader than they were Heidi, even though everything was exactly the same except for the name. The first name, the second name was still the same. So it's kind of difficult, and it might be going back to some of the soft skills we were talking about. I do think women have a stereotype sometimes as being nurturing, sensitive, and collaborative, which I think are really effective and undervalued sometimes leadership attributes. But when a behavior is congruent with these traits, when they're liked, they're sometimes not seen as powerful. And then when its behavior is counter to it, they're perceived negatively. So it's really difficult. There's a recent study out of Stanford Business School that I just read, where women who are aggressive and assertive and confident, but can turn it on and off, depending on the social circumstances, get more promotions than either men or women. So that's great. It's kind of a path forward. It's a little tricky, though, because it means that women have to be able to do something that men don't have to be able to do, which is kind of frustrating to me.
Yes, but that's most of the times the case.
Yeah, I guess so. It's just basically the message, if they can simultaneously present themselves as self-confident and sometimes dominant, while tempering these qualities with displays of communal characteristics and being flexible, then they get some extraordinary results. And I think there are women who have clearly been able to do that. I don't know how you categorize it, but you look at like Jacinta Ardern, who's running New Zealand, right? Christine Lagarde. In Europe, there are clearly some women who've been able to balance both of these and do amazingly well.
Thank you for that. I just don't know any other way, just like you probably. I've heard you even in our conversation, and I just want to repeat this a little bit, that you talk about building your social capital. What does it mean, and how does one do that?
So I think we've covered it in a way so far, but social capital to me is this bit about having colleagues who trust you and want to work with you, having people outside who trust you and either want to work with you or want to help you, whether that's mentors or a board of directors. Maybe it's some of what you end up building on LinkedIn, although I think social capital is more than I've seen you, I've written to you. It's actually somebody to whom you can reach out and ask a question.
Engage with.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Like, we all talk about financial capital, and the wealth of the world is down a bit right now because of the stock markets, but people still are focused on financial capital. But I think there's this other capital that's really important in life. And part of it's important for business, and part of it's important for most of us because, we like to have, not everybody, and I'm obviously more extroverted than some, but most people, even introverts, like to have some friends, some confidants, some people that they know and like. And I think that's important, and that's what social capital is. And I think, one of the problems with work from home and with the pandemic is we've had to draw down on that a lot. We haven't been able to build it as much.
I agree. But, by listening to you, and I completely see that it's actually not only for the career, and it's definitely not only in technology. This is important in our daily life in general. We have to build the social connections with one another and protect it and groom it and elevate it to the point where we have this capital. We have the social capital between us, all of us, to just to feel the way we are and to be at ease with one another. So I think this is probably where also the career and the life in general, your personal life, is super connected, because
Yep.
it correlates tremendously. Obviously, I'm jumping in so we can conclude soon. The competence in what you do, the competence, of course, is extremely important. But if there is anything more important than competence in order to advance in your career?
Yeah, I go back to, I think it's trust and this social capital. I think it's really about having built the ability to work with other people, to collaborate, to be an empathetic leader, to be, as Brene Brown often says, vulnerable as a leader, and create the trust. I think those things are all rolled up in one and very important to balance just the competence. I don't think everybody needs it. I think there are people who succeed without that, but I think it helps a lot. And if we even talk about what I just said about women, you know, this ability to transition how they behave in different situations, that Stanford study really points that out.
That's great. Wonderful. Aliza, before we finish, I will ask just a few very simple, very personal questions that most of the time I ask with a different content for my guests. What are you reading at the moment?
So I mostly read fiction. I try to get my nonfiction from podcasts. I'm reading a novel called Lost and Wanted by Nell, I think it's Frudenberger is her name. I'd heard about it from several people. It's a kind of a bittersweet love story about a lost friend, a missed romance, and a woman who's got this a single mother who's got an all-consuming career in theoretical physics. So I don't understand all of the stuff about black holes and physics in it, but it's a really compelling read. And it's about life-changing trade-offs we make, often without realizing their consequences. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm about halfway in.
Oh, great. So all of our listeners and who are watching us just now, please, if you have a question that is regards to what Aliza is reading and you don't remember the title and the author, just write either me a message or directly to Aliza. Aliza, are you a tiger mom? You have two wonderful sons and perfectly raised. Do they listen to your career advice to them, and do you influence them a lot in their decision making?
So I guess we should have interviewed them. I don't know if I'm a tiger mom or not. I am bossy. I didn't make them do piano lessons, but as you well know, I put them in a Mandarin immersion school in San Francisco so that they are fluent in Chinese. So maybe that makes me a bit of a tiger mom. I was visiting them in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and I walked in they happen to be living together right now. I walked in their apartment, which is a bit messy, and I started saying things about that. And one of them said, "Are you always going to be my mother, or a mother?" I was like, "Yep, I think so." So maybe I am a little bit. They ask me for advice, so I take that as a compliment. I don't know if they always follow it, but they do ask for things. Sometimes they want me to read an email before they send it off, or they ask about how they handle a work situation. So that always makes me feel good, that they actually want to hear from me.
That's great. Thank you for sharing this. What's next for Aliza?
Oh, dinner. I'm having dinner after this. Sorry, that was a bit of a joke. I don't know. I'm exploring this 3.0. So I'm doing a bit of speaking. I'm writing these Forbes articles. I don't know if I'll write another book. That was a lot of work. I know you've written at least 2, so I guess I need to take lessons from you there.
Was the COVID project, so I probably would have not done it if it would have not been for COVID. So
I sit on corporate boards, both private and public. I'm doing these 2 mentoring things. I'm trying to figure out, this Aliza 3.0, what does it look like? and traveling a bit more because we can now.
Yes,
Yay.
no, I know that, and I'm happy for you that you're traveling a little bit more, but I want to see you more often in between your travels. Well, thank you so much, Aliza. It was wonderful to talk to you in this space. And thank you everyone who joined us today. I know it's Saturday, but it's a rainy Saturday, so I hope you enjoyed with a glass of wine or cup of tea and learned quite a lot. I did. Please follow me. The conversation will be recorded and will be posted on my IG at Events by Olga, as well as on the YouTube channel under Conversations with Olga. All the episodes are recorded there as well. And please follow us and stay more for more episodes. Stay tuned for more episodes. And please buy a book. I think it will be a fascinating read. And thank you for sharing with us where we can get it. And I'm looking forward to the audio version of it as well. Thank you very much, Aliza, once again. And I'll see you very soon before you go into your next travel.
Thank you, Olga. It was great. I've always liked all your sessions, and it was a real thrill to be on one.
It's my pleasure and my honor. Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.